really happy for Matt Hankins. Matt Hankins, as you know, Cory, didn't have to come back and play this year. He could have declared for the draft, and I don't know what would have happened, but he would have certainly gotten a chance to make a team if he would have come out a year last summer or last April, May, whenever the draft was. But he chose to come back. I think that really says a lot about him. I don't know exactly what his motives were. I Matt Hankins when he was a high schooler down in Texas, and maybe 1 year later, he was an underclassman at the time. I think 1 year later we signed him, and I was impressed with him coming out of high school then. Doesn't surprise me at all that he's had a very nice career. I'm thankful he's still with us, and he's certainly an above-average cornerback in any league.
Don, again, great day. I do want to address something that bugged the living heck out of me during this game. And you can call me out if I'm wrong. We've seen it some in the chat, but this is my personal observation. I thought Brian Ferentz called a very poor game today. That was just my take. What were your thoughts on Brian?
Well, there were a few calls that I couldn't quite figure out. I will say this: they're at the end of the game. I would not have taken a knee.
Agreed.
On second or third down, and I wouldn't take a hit either. I would have simply ran the ball wide to the wide field, burned as much clock as I could, and then got on the ground before taking a hit. Now, maybe that would have only given us an additional 5 seconds, but 5 seconds on each of those plays would have taken 10 seconds off that clock. And instead of being at, I can't remember what the time was when they had their last shot. I think it was 46 maybe. Does that sound right? 42 or 46 seconds.
Something like that, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think it would have been easy to shave off another 10 seconds. And you might say it doesn't matter, but you never know. It could matter. And the point is, let's burn as much time as we possibly can. And that would involve doing something other than taking a knee. Me personally, I would not have taken a knee. I would have run the ball to the wide field, and I wouldn't really care how many yards I lost, although I do realize we did punt on fourth down. But with our guy's punt, with our guy's leg, I would have been tempted to tell him, just hit it as deep in the end zone as you can. I don't even want number 5 to have a chance to fair catch it. I want the ball to be in the end zone at that point. He fair caught it, of course, inside the 10. That was nice that it worked out that way for us. And at least we had good hang time, good coverage, no chance to return. I was fearful, of course, that there might be a chance to return the ball even.
As far as play calling, let me bring up a couple issues that I had. Again, I'm no play caller. Third and short, the play calling on third and short to me was abysmal. I've got a couple plays specifically written down here. 3rd and 2 in Penn State territory late in the second quarter. Iowa chooses not to call a timeout, so they let the clock run down. They go up out of the shotgun and throw an incompletion. Instead of, to me, now again, I know that was late in the first half, so the clock is a factor. I get that. But to me, I saw that trend throughout this game. 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2. Why can't we just get up behind center, sneak the dang ball? You get 3 yards per sneak. If you don't get it on third down, you're going to have 4th and 1, and you just do it again. Why are we coming out of the shotgun and throwing a fade to Tyrone Tracy in double coverage on 3rd and 3? Am I wrong there, Don? Is it more complicated than that?
Well, my guess is we do average more than 1 yard per carry on sneaks. Looks like we gain 2 or even 3 a lot of the time.
Yes.
So I can understand what you're saying. You know, is there anything that's going to be more reliable than sneaking the ball behind an All-American center?
Yeah.
And a fullback that's smart enough to give us a little push from behind.
And again, you get 4 down territory if you do that, Don. Again, you don't get on 3rd and 3, even if you only get a yard. I'd do it again on 4th and 2 or 4th and 1.
Yeah.
But instead, you give yourself one shot, a low percentage play, in my opinion. Again, I don't know, it was a go route. It looked like a fade to Tracy, and it happened to be in double coverage. But to me, that's a low percentage play, and the sneak is the highest percentage play we have in the playbook right now.
Right. Yeah, there were several. On the other hand, let's talk about the long ball to Reganey. That was a really well conceived play. I don't know if the listeners all had an idea really what happened. We were lined up with 2 receivers to our left side. They both ran post routes. They were mirrored routes. They were both breaking toward the post. The corner went with his man. He was the widest receiver on the field, and he went with him to the post. And Reganey made a move to the post, but then at the very last possible second, then he redirected to a flag route. So it was a post flag, if you will, but it was very difficult for the corner to recognize a corner in zone coverage. His basic responsibility is to be as deep as your deepest receiver, as wide as your widest receiver in your zone. Well, clearly he didn't see Reganey breaking back outside because he was occupied with the outside receiver who was driving to a skinny post, and he was going with him, as would be logical. Really a well-conceived play because we didn't just hit that flag route immediately. Reganey started off with a post move and then broke outside, and it was well thrown. It was a nice, safe throw. Didn't bother me at all that Reganey had to wait for the ball for a little bit because our guy was wide open. It was a really well-conceived play, and we couldn't run it at a better time. It looked like the game was tilting in our favor. Of course, we had such good field position. Even then, I think we were already across the 50. I think, weren't we? I believe we're in their territory on the first snap of that series. It was the first play of the series. Maybe one good aspect of that is maybe it gave us more time for the play action, because the play did take some time to develop, of course. We fake left, we rolled right, but it wasn't naked. We weren't going to continue to press the edge. We actually rolled right and pulled up and through, basically behind our right tackle. So it's a pass protection that did require some time, and thankfully we had plenty of time to do it, maybe in part because it was a first down play.
Absolutely agree, and I don't want to just sound like I'm bashing Brian. I didn't think he called a great game, but boy, what a huge call at a big time, and these guys executed. Good question here from Snoop Dogg. I'm assuming this is not the real Snoop Dogg, but he asks, how did they shut down Dotson? Don, they did a pretty good job on Dotson. They kept him in front of the defenders, the secondary, the majority of the game. Iowa's bend, don't break seemed to work.
Yeah, we gave him proper respect for his speed. We played with good cushion. And as we demonstrated today, we are maybe as capable of taking a deep throw as any receiver you'll find. Our defensive backs played the ball every bit as well as those Penn State receivers, and that's one reason they ended up in our hands. So I think we gave him a lot of respect. They chipped away at us, but anybody that holds Dotson, I believe he had 6 catches for 48 yards. Anybody that holds Dotson to something less than 50 yards, that is a major accomplishment, because I think as often as he's targeted, and he was targeted a lot today, but a lot of those targets fell incomplete or maybe even were intercepted. Nice job of just giving him the proper respect that he deserves. They did chip away at us with the little wide screens, that did add up. They did produce first downs, but we never hardly let them get outside for any kind of additional yardage. They were typically 4, 5, and 6 yard plays. The only thing that bugged me about them is every time they completed them, it was on the short side of the field, and it seemed, and every time they got their yardage and they got out of bounds.
Right.
That was one of my concerns, frankly, is the game was winding down and we were still playing from behind. As you know, we have a pretty deliberate pace, and a lot of the time we jump the formation and then we motion someone as well, and we're burning quite a bit of time. And of course, we were committed to run the ball at that stage of the game, and truthfully, we did run the ball with pretty good effectiveness, better effectiveness, I think, than maybe some people thought we would. And my only concern is we still got this at the time, I think it was a 7-point deficit. We still got this deficit to deal with. Meanwhile, this clock is running faster than what makes me comfortable. The clock was going fairly fast because we were eating up a lot of clock. So the only comment I would make if I was talking to the coaches is maybe be sure that, I'll say it this way, don't just use formation changes and motions just for the hell of it. Be sure you're for sure gaining something. Coach Ray used to refer to that as window dressing. And there's a purpose for it. It does confuse the other team a little bit. Their mind starts racing about what might be coming, and maybe it's coming just because of the motion, just because of the jump formation. Maybe it's strictly window dressing. You saw one time it was a good idea, really. One time we used, I think, movement and motion, and all we were going to do is run the sneak anyway. And that's actually a good idea, of course, because at that point they're not thinking sneak, because they're thinking, why would they run this motion just to sneak the football? It doesn't make sense that they would do that. Right. But there is a reason for doing it, of course, and that's maybe to put something else in the minds of the defense before we sneak another ball.
Point, Don. Patrick O'Connell, please stop calling the outside zone stretch the short side against a stacked box. Please, in all caps, Don. It is frustrating seeing a 10-yard run, a negative 4-yard run, an 8-yard run, a 0-yard run.
It seemed to me, outside zone, of course, can be run out of a lot of different looks. It seemed to me one of the best plays we had in our running game was outside zone to a tight end formation, or maybe even a tight end and a wing. I think our problem more was when it was only to a guard and tackle side, to a short edge. And, of course, a lot of the time it was into the boundary. And typically your tight end in so many cases is to the wide field. Not always. Just depends on the formation. But, the one thing I felt pretty good about overall was outside zone to a tight end. I think if you go back and look at those plays, I think they were pretty effective. There are any number of snaps where I saw Goodson running around the edge of the defense and turning down the field and making yards, getting bumped out of bounds, but typically after a 4, 5, 6-yard game.
Right.
So I understand where the listener's coming from. There were some short side, outside zones, mostly to a split end, I think, only a guard and tackle to that side. I think those were the bigger problem. I think when the tight end was there, I think we had better success.
Mary throwing some support here for Brian. We won the game. That's absolutely true. Question here, is the coach happy with the passing game, Don? I sure wasn't in the first half, but boy, when they needed a couple big plays, they had a couple big plays, and certainly receivers making plays after the catch. Both Reganey and Keegan Johnson, boy, those plays were huge.
Yeah, and Johnson's, of course, let's give Keegan a lot of credit. That play was not designed to be worth 42 yards. That was all about yardage after catch.
Yeah.
A nice move to free up against the first tackler, and then off he goes and down the field. And it was a wonderful play, again, for a freshman to be able to make that. The thing that comes to mind for me, still too inconsistent for my liking. Some of the completions, of course, are balls that should be 90% completions. There were others. Let's talk about the interception. That ball had too much pace on it again. I think it might have been a little bit behind the receiver. It was on him in a hurry. I think it was pretty high to begin with. It's another reason to try to keep those throws under the chin, is because if they get muffed, they simply go to the ground. So I believe the ball was high and a little bit behind, and it really was a little too much pace on the ball. It came in there pretty fast, and I believe that was Reganey, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Who had the tip? Yeah.
Yep,
it was a tough chance. Coverage was pretty tight as well, as I recall. So unfortunate. Spencer had some good moments for sure. I'm proud of him on the long gainer to Reganey, because there's a receiver that's wide open. And believe me, sometimes those are the hardest ones to throw and catch, because you recognize, oh my God, I cannot screw this up, because this is a big play waiting to happen. Nice, safe throw. No chance of an overthrow. And, of course, Reganey knew what to do with it. I am curious, though. The replay that I saw, honest to God, I don't know how we got credit for a touchdown on that. Because the way I saw it, I'm curious what the announcer said, Cory. It appeared to me the ball was in his outside arm. He hit the pylon with his right arm.
Yeah.
And somehow they thought that was a touchdown. I didn't understand.
I was watching the guys I was watching the game with. Don said the same thing after seeing it on Fox. But here's the deal: it was called a touchdown on the field. His left arm also touched the pylon. Now, did the ball cross it? Probably not. But there was no. They don't have a camera straight above the pylon. I think in the NFL they do. At least at some time I've seen that. But it's hard to. I think it's just hard to overturn that call. There wasn't evidence.
The point I made is they were deliberating. I said, we're going to be okay either way, because at the worst, it's going to be 1st and goal. And thankfully, we didn't have to snap it again, and the play stood. But I was just curious what the announcer said about that very play.
Absolutely. Matt Hankins had a huge game. The 4th down tackle, Don, was monstrous. The interception, which, technically, I guess Matt could have knocked that last interception down. It wouldn't have mattered, although they wouldn't have had a chance. I actually thought it was a good thing. He probably didn't think this deeply about it, Don, but had you not intercepted that, Iowa would have had 1st and goal, so they wouldn't have had an opportunity to get first downs. They would have had to have scored, which is probably not a bad problem to have. But in either way, it was a good game for Matt. And I thought Terry Roberts played well in relief. I mean, he looks like he's more than capable.
I agree with you. Yeah, he plays with a lot of confidence. He's a very good athlete. He's long, a lot like Hankins. And, of course, that's what you want is a cornerback that's not going to lose out in a jumping contest. Our guys can go up with tall receivers and contest the ball and get their fair share of those balls that are thrown deep.
Okay, Don, we do have a caller here for you. Thank you for calling Iowa Post Game at the Voice of College Football. Who do we have on the line?
This is Zach.
Hi, Zach.
Yep. I had a few things. Not to be a young curmudgeon here, but because I mean, overall we got the win, and it's a good day to be a Hawkeye fan. Just a couple of things here, though. Well, first I get this out of the way. Hawkins, that announcer, but the game this big, couldn't someone have slipped him a note, the announcer a note saying it's Hankins instead of Hawkins? But anyway,
I like
was,
Gus Johnson, but you're right. We kept saying Hawkins too, just to be funny. But yeah, Fox is having some issues. You heard Brando have some issues as well. So
yeah, right. But then when it comes to Brian Ferentz, I've kind of sometimes I start talking myself into liking the play calling, but today I decided, just because a guy or a play caller keeps a couple pretty darn good plays in their back pocket, pulls them out at a good time, so give him some good, some credit for that when he does it.
Yeah.
But why the wait? I mean, like some of our play calling just gets so unbelievably predictable. It's just like, okay, now we're going to run the ball. We ran it up with some success, so we're going to keep doing that. Now we're going to change it up, and we're going to pass the ball. And then, like with the runs, you can see that run blitz coming from the weak side, and they're not even disguising it. It's like, I don't know. And it's not just this game that happens. It's happened all season.
Don, do you have any thoughts on that, Don?
Yeah, I'm glad this came up. Thank you, caller, for that question. I remember a couple of weeks ago, Cory, this question was asked, and I didn't really offer a great answer at the time. The question was, what can we do to get off to a better start? It seems like we start slowly in general. And I gave an answer, but it wasn't my best answer. And the more I thought about it, I flashed back on something we did when I became a head coach. I decided this is the way we're going to do it. You've seen a lot of call sheets in your day, right, Cory? Talking about whether it's NFL or college.
Yeah.
If a guy's down the field, the typical call sheet is pretty good size. And, of course, there's printing on both sides of a call sheet. And that's fine because I've seen a lot of call sheets like that. At UConn, we had that kind of call sheet because that's what the coaching staff was used to when I got there. And but one thing I did when I went to Western Illinois, I had my own idea of what the call sheet should look like. So if you can imagine, I basically took 8.5 by 11 stiff board. I don't know what to call it. What it's not board. It's just heavy paper.
Yeah.
Heavy paper. And I simply folded it and made it into a book, if you will. And now it had a front page. It had 2 inside pages, had a back page, right? They were all 8.5 by 11 or more or less that size. And what I did, I was always, back in those days, I was a fan of David Letterman at the time. And if I was lucky, I got to see him every now and then because sometimes I just got home in time to watch him. And sometimes I missed him. But anyway, the thing I remember from David Letterman, our listeners remember too, back in the day, he had a top 10 list. He had a top 10 list, and it was all kind of goofy subject matter, top 10 list of this and that. And it occurred to me, I know what I want to do. On page 1 of this 4-page book, this call sheet, if you will, on page 1, I'm going to have top 10 runs, top 10 passes. These are the best 10 runs for this game, the best 10 passes. I didn't pick all 20 of them. I would pick numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Mark Hendrickson, our offensive coordinator, would pick 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So we drafted this list together. And we didn't do it until Thursday, until the Thursday workout was even behind us. So basically, the call sheet, the plays we were going to run were all in. And what we were doing at that point in time to zero in on 10 runs, 10 passes, we were simply identifying what we thought were the 20 best plays to be run in this football game. Doesn't mean you run them once, you might run them 5 times. But my point was, in the first half, in general, we got through most of those 20 plays. They showed up early because they were what we thought were our best calls. Okay. We weren't going to wait around. And you've heard stories about people that put together a script. Yeah. I've heard the number 15 has been thrown out. We're going to list, here's our 15 plays. We're going to start the game with these 15 plays. Well, the only problem with that, maybe a few of the plays on that list are plays specifically for 3rd and short. And if you're just going down the script, that's kind of silly. Why wouldn't you save it to run it in a 3rd and short situation? And that's how you like to play anyway. So logically, you would be able to pick and choose from that list of plays. Well, we had a list of 20 plays, 10 runs, 10 passes. It was pretty easy for us to strike pretty good balance between run and pass in the first half. And at halftime, I'd be willing to bet you, in general, we'd gone through at least 14 of those 20 plays. And in many cases, we'd run them several times. Now, obviously, if it's an exotic, if it's a trick play, you probably only run it once, that's for sure. You run it once and it works, and then you move on. But I do think that a lot of coaches make the mistake of not keeping track of plays that were good to them. I've heard Bill Brazier say many times, thank God they didn't come back to that play, because we don't really have a good answer for it. And in so many cases, they simply forget about it. You still have to prepare for the possibility that you're going to see it again, but in many cases, it never shows up again. And so that's a mistake some offensive coaches make, is not keeping track of the plays that were effective, because as Coach Fry used to say, milk it till it's dry, right? That's that expression. Right. Don't forget about it. Coach Fry was notorious. If it was really good, if it was a play to the right involving pro right, the very next snap might be pro left, and that same play flipped over and run to the left side. And I think some defenses did pick up on that. They knew Hayden Fry is notorious for running at the very next play, simply flipping the formation and flipping the play. Obviously, if they're not aware that might be a tendency, it's a good thing to do, because they don't have the time to communicate about how to solve that last play.
And caller, just to add to that real quick, I think running the football effectively certainly is a prerequisite for Iowa to have success down the field. And Iowa started to run the ball a little bit better. I mean, Goodson ran the ball pretty well all game, but it's got to be the right time. I mean, that Reganey play that was hit at the right time, I give Brian credit for that.